Alright, so we're back in our 8th grade workbook, and I'm going to read to you still on lesson number 1, but we're reading the second passage on page 9. So go ahead and follow along. While you're reading, think about what point of view the story's in, and how does the author use the flashbacks to reveal more information in the story. A Summer to Remember. Andrea and her father, Pierre, stood at the entrance to the tent camp where several hundred people had been living since their homes had been destroyed in a terrifying earthquake just 6 months ago. When the earthquake struck, it was the worst disaster to ever hit the island, which was why the ruins of abandoned concrete homes were still scattered for miles around. Piles of concrete debris surrounded the tent camp, where the earthquake ripped through their town, cracking wood and concrete until houses were left in rubble. Hundreds of people had been rendered homeless almost immediately. Andrea remembered how her family in Atlanta had been glued to the television, watching the rescue attempts. Andrea's father was especially upset as he pointed out all the places from his hometown that were now destroyed. The center of the earthquake was only 5 miles from where he grew up. And although Pierre had lived in the United States for more than 30 years, his first home held a special place in his heart. In the United States, Pierre had established himself as a carpenter, like his father, and built up his own successful construction company. So Andrea was not surprised when her father said, "They need my construction skills. Look at how many thousands of people lost their homes in the earthquake. Families are living in the ruins of buildings that could collapse into rubble at any minute. Surely I could help them rebuild." Pierre continued, "I can't leave my business now, and I think it's probably better to wait for the government and the international charitable organizations to put plans in place to help the people. Instead, I think I should wait until summer, and then you can come home with me, Andrea. Most of the chaos should ease up by then, and we can meet up with one of the organizations and spend a few months repairing and rebuilding the damaged homes. I think you could learn a lot from the experience." Andrea didn't see any reason to think about the trip at all. "Dad, you forgot that I'm supposed to go to a rugby camp this summer. I just got on the team, and if I don't practice, they'll drop me for sure. Coach Finney will be furious." Pierre shook his head. "This is more important. You'll be helping suffering people, your people." Andrea scowled. "But I don't even know them. Why should I give up my summer vacation for a bunch of people I've never met?" As Andrea's harsh statements hung in the air between her and her father, Pierre's face hardened. "Whether you like it or not, you are going. You have a lot to learn. Helping others will help you." For months, Andrea tried to get out of the trip, but her father wasn't accepting no for an answer. As soon as school ended for the year, Pierre and Andrea met up with a group of volunteers and boarded an international flight. Andrea scanned the passengers, all adults, no kids her age. She started to think about her friends at home and all the fun things they had planned for the summer vacation. But that just made her more miserable. After the long trip with his morose daughter, Pierre decided to plunge right into relief efforts. The next morning, they boarded a truck and stopped at a tent camp for families who had lost their homes. Andrea stared with disbelief at the skimpy tents with whole families, parents, kids, babies, elderly grandparents crammed inside. Women were busy bringing food to a central cooking area where they hung pots over a crude fireplace, while men and teenagers were digging a new latrine. Younger kids were playing on the piles of concrete. "Dad, why are they letting the kids play on those broken pieces of concrete? They could get hurt. There are even babies wandering around near that dangerous stuff." Her father shook his head wearily. "I guess there's no place else to play. The kids don't really have anything to do while their parents are working." Andrea thought about this as she walked on the muddy paths between the lines of tents. After a while, she said to her father, "When we get back to our campsite, I'm going to get my rugby ball. I'm going to teach these kids to play rugby." Pierre smiled broadly. "I think they like soccer better, but you can try." "Hey, I can do that too. We'll see which game they like better." Andrea returned the next day with a rugby ball and a soccer ball. As soon as the kids saw her, they gathered around, gesturing and speaking in a language that sounded a lot like French. Andrea tried to remember the French she'd learned in school. Using her broken French and hand gestures, Andrea got the kids to understand how to play touch rugby. Despite her father's warning, the kids seemed to play rugby with just as much enthusiasm as they played their own favorite sport. Over the next few weeks, Andrea became like a sister to many of the kids in the tent city. The kids played rugby and soccer with her during the days. Then at night, their parents invited her into their crowded tents to eat spicy rice and beans. No matter how little they had, they shared with her. Andrea was amazed at their selflessness and generosity. Each night as she ate among them, she looked down at the thin mats where they slept, in these homes with no plumbing or electricity. And observing the few comforts these families cherished forced her to realize how much she took for granted at home in Atlanta. She felt ashamed of all the times she complained about having to share a bathroom with her older brother, when these people had no bathroom at all. Missing rugby camp no longer seemed like such a big deal. Not only was this trip a worthwhile experience, but she also promised herself that she would come back next summer and help more kids.